Tonight, attempts to get the economy moving are slow, steady and strict as the country continues to fight the novel coronavirus. Here first is a check of the global numbers. Now, the total infections as at this hour stand at 3,029,323. There have been 209,227 deaths globally, while those who have recovered have increased to 900,319. Now, Africa's total infections stand at 33,285. Africa's death toll is at 1,495 and 10,259 people have recovered. To the United States, and the total infections there are at 995,288. The death toll is at 56,139, while the recoveries are at 122,675. We will zoom in on Kenya, of course, but first, here are the day's highlights. Tonight,
restaurants will operate between 5 and 4 p.m.
Partial reopening of the wheels of the economy begins, but under strict controls.
Those restaurants must limit the number of persons who are going to be in the restaurant.
Plus, recovered patients sick and tired.
More than 21 days. Nimeletiwa bill ya 52. Sisi hatukuwa tunajua tutalipishwa.
Patients at Kenyatta University facility reject a hospital bill.
Nimechoka kunyanyaswa mimi.
Also tonight,
If it may please my lord,
a judge, lawyers and jail. 4 locations united through technology.
The uniqueness is that it's the first case of its kind, to be held using this electronic system.
There is a new world order, and so is the order of conducting court sessions. And the mirrors of hope in Mombasa's neighborhood walls.
Kutokana na hii hali ya janga la corona, nikapata fursa, nikaona ni idea poa nichore kuhusu vipi tunaweza peana message kwa jamii.
It's time to heal the world, so artists are going to work, and their language is paint, their homes the canvas.
NTV Tonight with Smriti Vidyarthi.
Thanks so much for joining us. Tonight, our sign language interpreter is David Agondoa. Now, the government has begun the long road to economic recovery by opening some businesses, albeit with caution and strict controls. Well, this comes on a day that the Ministry of Health announced 8 new infections and as many recoveries. Now, 3 of the new cases are here in Nairobi County, 4 from Mombasa County and 1 from Kwale County. The total number of cases in the country now stands at 363. The 8 new recoveries raise the total number to 114, almost a third of the total case load. And the number of deaths, fortunately, stays at 14. Well, it is this promising trend that the government is banking on as it begins to open up the country by allowing restaurants and eateries to resume business. But as Leila Mohammed reports, the businesses have a lot to do before they can open. Apologies for that. We will bring you Leila's story in just a moment. But in summary, as I said, restaurants and eateries are allowed to open, but there are strict instructions before they do so. One of the things that needs to be ensured is that all staff in those businesses are tested for COVID-19, and all must, of course, test negative before they can open. The government has also put in restrictions as to how close people can sit together and how many people can sit at one table. Buffets are out of the question, and we will have to keep an eye and a check on how that goes. Here now is Leila with that story.
Since March the 13th, 2020, a huge chunk of the economy has remained parked on the tarmac. But as things stand as they are this particular moment, the government says now it needs to keep the economy beating. And for this to happen, certain eateries and restaurants will become open for people to come and eat there, as well as ensuring that their safety is a matter of concern. However, places that sell alcohol will now remain closed until government ensures that it has been able to fight COVID-19 completely. But before diners can walk into restaurants to enjoy their meals, the restaurants and eateries must implement strict guidelines laid down by the ministry, including testing all staff members.
Restaurants will operate between 5 and 4 p.m., not later than that, because after that, then it becomes difficult to for the people to get home, just for curfew. We also have asked that those restaurants that are going to open for this purpose must limit the number of persons who are going to be in the restaurant. They can be able to keep at least 4 people for 10 square meters. The tables within the dining areas must be spaced at least 1.5 meters apart.
Restaurants offering alcohol are allowed to serve drinks to customers waiting for a meal during the meal or 30 minutes after a meal has ended.
It is not a license to start opening alcohol sale across the country. Alcohol shall only be sold with those having meals in the normal manner in a restaurant. We have not opened bars.
The decision to open up the economy is based on promising trends, with 8 more recoveries for a total of 114. The government believes we are making good strides.
The Kenyan situation will unravel itself because of one single factor, and that is our own self-discipline. If we discipline ourselves, and if we take responsibility at an individual level, then it is quite possible that we can begin to defeat this virus.
It is, however, the rise in community infections in densely populated areas within Nairobi and Mombasa counties that is of concern.
We have got 4 from Mombasa, and you can see now Mombasa is becoming a concern, an area of concern. And we have got the rest of them from Nairobi, and all of them are Kenyans. All of them are Kenyans. Before it used to be people have traveled elsewhere.
The government says that while it is opening up sections of the economy, caution still remains as the ore of its decision making. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
Elsewhere, there was a scare at the Kenyatta University quarantine facility today, as some of those in isolation threatened to commit suicide by throwing themselves off a 5-story building for being detained over unpaid bills. Now, they claim they're being frustrated by the facility. Zainab Ismail has those details.
They stood on this balcony for hours, contemplating a choice between life and death. After hours of dangling on the jaws of death, the 3 opted for life, but their frustrations stayed with them.
Nilitolewa kwa nyumba juu nilikuwa na shida ya kifua na kukohoa. Kufika Mbagathi nilipimwa. Kupimwa nikakaa hadi saa 2. Kukaa hadi saa 2 tukaambiwa ati tunapelekwa KU University. Siku ya kutoka nikaenda nikauliza sana naweza toka, nikaambiwa ati wewe ngojea utalipa ndio utoke. Nikauliza nalipa nini, na mimi na serikali ilisimamia kila kitu. Tunatishiwa maisha, tunaambiwa ati tutauliwa. Sasa tulikuwa tunaomba tusaidiwe tutoke hapa.
Wakati nilifika hapa, daktari wakaniambia kwamba wamenipima corona, niko negative. Sasa shida ambayo niko nayo ni kifua. Sasa inafaa nitibiwe kifua, lakini hawanitibu hata kidogo. Wananiletea tu dawa za Piriton na mwisho wananitupa huko.
Nikaitwa bill ni 15. Mimi nikwambiaje? Sina hata shilingi, na kama niyo bill mwenye italipwa mwepatie kazi, ama mimi sikuwa ready kulipa bill, sikuwa na pesa. Kama basi wewe kaka ta solve. Nimekaa hapa sasa more than 21 days. nimeletewa bill ya 52 mwenye ni kaos sina hata shilingi sasa na demo na hapo unafungiwa tu.
Each patient is charged 3,135 per night at this facility, according to this receipt. This despite the fact that they were informed that the government would foot the bills. One of the patients said he pleaded with the hospital to allow him to work at the facility to cancel out his bill. But what they say has been their biggest concern is the manner in which they are being treated while in quarantine.
Sahi yani hata sasa mimi kwangu kumeibiwa, I have like nothing to lose. Sahi like I have nothing niko nayo. Mtu kama ana pesa waga anadhulumiwa hivi. Na watu wetu sisi tumekubali kama sisi tumekubali kama hatuna pesa ya kulipa tulikuwa kotini tukashtaki mahakama tufungwe tuweze kama kawaida juu hata bilioni hatuwezi pesa hata pesa sio Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta pote penye huko ni sio makini vizuri sana sisi hapa tuwateseka.
The situation at the Kenyatta University Referral Hospital quarantine facility is not an isolated case. A patient reportedly attempted to commit suicide while in isolation at the Mbagathi Infectious Diseases Unit. He said to have removed a fluorescent tube in his room, broke it and attempted to slit his throat with it. He was rescued. Zainab Ismail, NTV.
Well, these are certainly desperate and deadly actions that people in extreme situations are considering, and it certainly does require the attention of the government, and we certainly hope that they will look seriously into those attempts. Now, following an NTV expose on Sunday on how weak border controls are aiding Kenyans in breaching the containment guidelines set out by the state, police officials have heightened their surveillance at roadblocks. Caught up in this wave of playing catch-up were hundreds of health officials dispersed by police despite holding valid documentation allowing them to cross the containment borders. Ruth Samwe has more.
This morning, close to 500 health officials were among those who were dispersed by police with tear gas and water cannons at Chania Bridge in Thika as they appealed to law enforcement to allow them to cross the containment border.
Today being a Monday, we're also expecting doctors working with the whole of Mount Kenya region also to be either going home if they were on call or on duties for a whole 1 week, or either going back home or going to work. So Mondays we are expecting a heavy traffic of personal cars, and wherever the security people see the heavy traffic, they feel offended.
The health officials have been using the same route for the past 3 weeks since the implementation of border restrictions. This time, their documents and passes would not suffice. The sick too were left stranded.
Nilitoka asubuhi mapema nielekea Keno Hospital kufanyiwa dialysis sababu naendanga siku 2 per week. Hiyo ni Monday na Thursday. Na wakati nilifika mahali bari ya roadblock iko, hawakuweza kuangalia karatasi yangu ama nini, waliniambia tu nipiduke. Nikaenda hapo, nimepiduka mara 3. Saa mara 4 ndio nimekuja nikasimama mahali nifikirie la kufanya.
This hostility has forced the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacies and Dentist Union to suspend the travelling of doctors until they are assured of their security.
We have today morning resolved that for the safety and protection of our healthcare workers in that region, they shall go back home until such a time that the relevant authorities implementing this directive shall feel that doctors are important to serve Kenyans in this country.
This comes a day after an NTV expose showing loopholes in the implementation of border controls.
You are the people who are trying to save Kenyans. Is that not true? Yes, then you are supposed to be the good example. You are supposed to behave well. Yeah. But going like this, crossing the roadblock all the time, we will not allow that.
The Medical Practitioners Union is, however, asking the government to equip health officials with adequate protective equipment to protect them from the virus. Ruth Sarmoi, NTV.
Targeted coronavirus testing on all truck drivers in the country is yet to begin, a day after the Ministry of Health announced it would start testing the drivers transporting goods across the country. Now, our news teams tracked the trucks from Mombasa to the busy Busia border, and the drivers only had their temperature checked at the numerous roadblocks along their routes. According to sources who sought anonymity, the Ministry of Health officials at the Busia border point are yet to receive the testing kits, but are expecting them from Wednesday. It's also not clear how the testing will be carried out, since the screening forces delays and, of course, traffic snarl-ups. 5 drivers from Kenya have tested positive of the coronavirus in Uganda. Now, for the first time in the history of the judiciary, the Court of Appeal today held a virtual sitting, marking what could be the first step towards the adoption of technology by the courts in the fight against the coronavirus. The session was conducted through Skype and comprised judges, lawyers and petitioners in different locations. Silas Apollo has more.
10 o'clock Monday, and Edward Asitiba, an advocate of the High Court, is setting up his laptop computer for a court session.
This court
Today is a different day for the lawyer. For the first time in his career, he is defending his client away from the courtroom. It is also the first time a court proceeding is done via Skype.
My lord.
On the other end of the line are 3 presiding judges in the case, led by the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice William Ouko.
The presiding officer in any court.
Another participant, a prosecutor from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, is tuned in from his office as the applicant listens in from jail in Athi River.
The uniqueness is that it's the first case of its kind, to be held using this electronic system that is on conference on Skype.
The virtual session is part of an effort by the judiciary to continue hearing cases without risking the lives of people through traditional court sessions.
If it may please my lord, Honorable Mr. Justice.
The session runs smoothly as Asitiba, together with his colleague, begin with their opening remarks. But as is the case with technology, there was a technical glitch which led to a temporal suspension of the proceedings. Today's session was in response to the concerns by the public and the Law Society of Kenya that the suspension of sittings in the courts could lead to a huge backlog of cases. Earlier, the judiciary had opted for open outdoor court sessions as it sought to reduce the spread of the virus, but Chief Justice David Maraga suspended the move, terming it risky, instead advocating for the adoption of technology, and this could just be the first of many.
The question is, are the courts going to stop? Crime will not stop being committed, or are we going to keep these prisoners incarcerated forever until this? The answer is no. So to me, I commend the court for coming up with this technology.
Today's session marks the beginning of a new normal for the judiciary as it seeks to adhere to the guidelines set by the Ministry of Health, as well as decluster a possible backlog of cases. Silas Apollo, NTV.
I found I could say things with colour and shapes that I couldn't say any other way. Things I had no words for. Well, these are the words of a famous artist on how she expressed her feelings and thoughts and spoke to society through art. Words that are now resounding for a young man in Mombasa County who's using art to not only sensitize the public, but also appreciate the frontline workers in the global war against the coronavirus. Kevin Motai has his story.
In the Buxton neighborhood of Mombasa City, the writing is on the wall. These are the pictures to a script written in many Kenyan souls in this time of a global pandemic. From the selfless acts of the stubborn angels gently holding the pulse of a nation and refusing to yield it to a stealthy killer, to the administrative interventions slowing down the spread of the virus and saving lives, this wall-to-wall coverage by paint is the work of Teddy Tunje's hands.
Chora Buxton mwanzo kwa ndoto wetu sana, ndoto yangu sana toka nijue hizi ukuta. Sasa kutokana na hii hali ya janga la corona, nikapata fursa, nikaona ni idea poa nikikaa na idea tuchore kuhusu vipi tunaweza peana message kwa jamii na kuelimisha kuhusu janga la corona na athari zake.
This graffiti depicts Kenyans from different walks of life hailing the frontline workers.
Kupitia michoro kama vile tayari ninavyosema, ni kwamba kama huna kitu muhimu kufanya mjini ama mahali kwenye watu kadhaa, ni bora ubaki nyumbani. Yaani tunamaanisha stay home, stay safe.
In the words of popular American novelist Toni Morrison, and I quote, "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. This is how civilizations heal." End of quote. Tunje is playing his part in healing mankind, and his language is art.
At least pia imeleta umaridadi kwa Pakistani, kwa sababu tumekaa muda mrefu bila kupakiwa rangi, but sasa tumefurahi sana.
They're also trying to relay a message in support of the frontline health workers who have been instrumental in the fight against the pandemic. That is our healthcare workers, the nurses, the doctors, the clinicians, who have basically put their lives on the line and they have sacrificed to actually save the life of the fellow mwananchi.
But this is not the only intervention here. Disinfection of buildings and business premises is ongoing. The county government now says that it will partner with this group of artists in decorating the island city with art that promotes the region as a tourism hub. Kevin Mutai, NTV, Mombasa.
An attempt there to heal just what the world needs. Well, what helps you heal? Let me know. Tweet me at Smriti Vidyarthi or at NTV Kenya. Now, we can, of course, all agree that this global pandemic has brought with it a new world order. And nowhere is this new order stamping its authority more than the service industry, the workplace and work itself. Well, on team coverage this Wednesday, we explore how the global crisis has changed the face of work as we know it and what this paradigm shift portends.
Government offices, businesses are encouraged to allow employees to work from home.
Working from home is actually a feature companies need to look into.
When we load important services onto technology platforms, we are not very careful, you will end up excavating the inequalities.
There's a great opportunity for Kenya to localize a lot of the goods.
Necessity is the mother of invention. You've come up with this invention at the right time.
Tumesimamishwa kazi. The business definitely it's a huge shift.
It will call for sacrifice, including pay cuts.
We do not want Kenyans to lose jobs unnecessarily. We have to find some money to be able to manage payrolls.
The state is the guarantor of business in any country.
Team coverage this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Don't miss it. The hashtag #TheFutureOfWork. All right, you are watching NTV Tonight. Time for a short breather, but of course stay with us. There's plenty more coming up on the other side of this break.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white clothes, towels and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
Are we not invited? We have gifts. Malaria.
Mommy, pests.
Rat.
Oh, die.
Party.
Compared to laundry spray, Mortein Doom Power Guard kills disease-causing pests instantly. Mortein Doom Power Guard.
What do you see on the horizon? They say how you start your decade will determine how the rest of it will be. Imagine a decade full of opportunities, investment being one of them. Do you want a place to feed your mind, body and soul? A place to unwind every day, where you can get your health and fitness goals attained? A secure place for your family? A center for quality academic goals for your kids? Or perhaps a place to connect with your friends? Well, you can get all this and more at Amani Ridge, the place of peace, just 20 kilometers from the CBD. Call us today on 0790 300 300 or visit www.optivan.co.ke.
Dettol's main objective is to help children protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold?
No!
They are spread through germs on your hands. Your hands collect germs that causes diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap that gives the best germ protection ever against many illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath, bath, bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Welcome back to the broadcast. A week after NTV highlighted her plight, Ruth Wanjiru, a Nyeri woman who was unable to get home due to the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi after she and her son were discharged from the Kenyatta National Hospital, has finally been reunited with her family. The 49-year-old mother of 5 had been stuck in Kawangware, where a Good Samaritan had taken her in after she and her baby, who suffers from a heart and blood condition, were discharged 2 weeks ago. Now, after obtaining clearance to travel from the government, Nyeri woman representative Rahab Mukami released her personal car to transport her to Nyeri, where she was this afternoon welcomed by her children and neighbours. Other organisations have also since come forward to assist in the baby's treatment.
Media walikuja. Sasa ndio nikawaeleza. Wanipoeleza sasa Sunday ndio nilipigiwa na mheshimiwa Mukami simu. Akaniambia ameniona kwa TV. Sasa akaniuliza anataka anisaidieje. Mimi nikamwambia ninaomba tu unisaidie pia naweza fika Nyeri kwa familia yangu. Akaniambia enda ushughulike, ukipata barua unipigie. Nimeleta mpaka kwa nyumbani mesha. Kwa hivyo namshukuru mheshimiwa sana kwa heshima nyingi na upendo mwingi na huruma nyingi.
Good for her. Now, away from the coronavirus, thousands of people across the country have been left homeless due to raging floods. While the country's focus is on the coronavirus pandemic, the destruction caused by the rains is inflicting anguish on vulnerable Kenyans.
This is the reality for hundreds of families in various estates in Gurubani town, Mwea East sub-county. Their homes and properties worth millions of shillings destroyed after heavy floods wreaked havoc.
Tumeenda hasara mingi sana, vitu zote zimeenda na maji, hatukuwa na mahali kwa kulala, tumelala kama tumesimama tu.
Heavy rainfall caused the National Irrigation Board water canals to overflow, and residents are decrying poor drainage in the town, saying it has contributed to the flooding. Meanwhile, residents of Moyale and Wajir counties were forced to wait for hours on either side of the border over the weekend, as the only road between the two counties was swollen by flood waters. Some even resorted to praying by the riverbanks, hoping for some kind of relief. In Kiambu County, residents of Murera and Kimbo areas in Juja are worried over a potential outbreak of waterborne diseases. The most affected are homeowners in Kimbo area, where at least 20 homes are submerged.
Nguruwe 20 zimekufa sababu ya maji. Kumejaa maji. Vitu yangu kuku zangu zimekufa.
In Baringo, Lake Bogoria has burst its banks, submerging toilets and parts of Liboy dispensary, which has been closed for 2 days. Residents are forced to walk for about 20 kilometers to the next health facility in Marigat, which according to residents is unaffordable for most. A mudslide at El Burgon in Molo sub-county left a railway line hanging in the balance. The rains also destroyed roads and crops. The residents are calling on the government to immediately reconstruct the site. The meteorological department has warned heavy rains will continue in many parts of the country. Gena Kirori, NTV.
The Ministry of Health is targeting to collect at least 720,000 units of blood in its blood banks. The country is, however, in need of at least 960,000 units of blood as per the World Health Organization recommendations. Now, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe today established an advisory committee on supply and utilization of blood and blood products in the country. Its mandate is to oversee health reforms to revolutionize Kenya's blood supply. While inaugurating the advisory committee, the CS said the ministry will also look into the importance of using ICT in blood centres to manage blood as per the need and also create a database of donors. The new task force will also look into challenges faced by hospitals. The former Red Cross Society Secretary General, that's Abbas Gule, will head the committee. Now, the current global pandemic is not the first the world has experienced and is certainly not the deadliest, at least this far. Slightly over a century ago, an almost similar strain of flu attacked a world then less advanced in the practice of medicine and hygiene, wiping over 50 million people off the face of the earth. Gina Kirori spoke to a medical historian on the lessons from history.
The year is 1918. A deadly flu is sweeping across the globe and devastating mankind. The deadly flu was otherwise known as the Spanish flu. The virus is said to have originated from the US because of intermingling of soldiers in the trenches. The symptoms included fever, fatigue, and swelling of the lungs with fluid. Nairobi, then a young city, was not spared of the vagaries.
In fact, it got to Kenya, for example, through the port of Mombasa, came with the returning soldiers, and the first cases start to be seen from about August, September 1918, and then it spreads like wildfire across the country. So that by the following year, 1919, about June, almost 150,000 people had lost their lives.
The disease then exploded in the US city of Philadelphia, killing 14,500 in the first 15 weeks. The outbreak lasted 36 months and left 2.8 million people dead in Africa alone. Globally, at least 50 million lost their lives. That's more than the casualties of the First World War.
We build huge headquarters of this or that, but we have failed to invest in what will protect our human well-being when we need it most. And that is our healthcare system.
Fast forward to 2003 and in comes the SARS virus. The severe acute respiratory syndrome caused by another strain of the coronavirus was first identified in Guangdong, China in November 2002 when Dr. Zhang Wu was treating patients for atypical pneumonia. He had to attend a family wedding in Hong Kong and checked into a hotel. It might have been a sneeze in the lift or sharing a bus ride, but it infected several others who then carried the virus to Canada, Vietnam, Singapore, and eventually other parts of the world. Over 8,000 people from 29 countries were infected and at least 774 worldwide. The outbreak lasted about 8 months and the World Health Organization declared it contained on 5th July 2003. In both cases, one thing is clear: the more things change, the more they remain the same. In the words of George Wilhelm Hegel, a famous historian who once said that the one thing he learned from history is that people do not learn from history. But by learning from the pandemics and using modern medicine, technology, and general medical prudence, we may just avoid another of this kind. Kena Kirori, NTV.
frightening statistics right there, and we can just but remain hopeful. Well, as Kenyans are lining up to clap for frontline medical staff, lack of protective gear and risk allowance are driving them to the point of work boycott. In your Daily Nation tomorrow, find out why a threat of a strike by nurses, clinical officers, laboratory technicians and 14 other categories of health workers threatens to plunge the fight against coronavirus into a crisis. Be sure to grab your copy of the Daily Nation tomorrow. Time for another breather. Do stay with us. I will be back in just a moment with the day's business news.
The risk of illness-causing germs is increasing. It is believed that the coronavirus can remain on surfaces in your home for up to 9 days. Touching infected surfaces is one of the ways in which germs spread. Regularly disinfect your floors, countertops, and kitchen surfaces with bleach. And use an effective toilet cleaner inside and outside your toilet bowl. This message is brought to you by Medifacts, Jig, and Harpic.
Selena!
Toto, where's Mummy?
Today's a toilet day.
What? Oh.
Selena!
Toilet day?
Tomorrow we're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
It's a toilet, not a white shirt. Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with bleach and detergent, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible.
Challenge. Harpic 10X. Even if you use bleach and detergent 10 times, they won't give you the same sparkling clean toilet that Harpic 10X will give you.
Wow!
Harpic 10X. Harpic, Kenya's #1 toilet cleaner.
Nyaje wa Kenya. Hii ni public service announcement kuhusu coronavirus.
The Ministry of Health advises all returnees from abroad to self-quarantine for at least 14 days, whether they feel well or unwell.
Wash your hands regularly following the 8 steps of hand washing. Wet hands with warm water. Apply a small amount of soap. Rub palms together. Rub fingers and thumbs and the beads in between. Rub nails on palms, rub the back of each hand, rinse with clean running water, and dry thoroughly with a clean dry towel.
Furthermore, it is advisable to cover your mouth and nose adequately when sneezing or coughing and immediately dispose of the tissue in a dustbin. Please do not use handkerchiefs if you can avoid it. If disposable tissue is unavailable, cough into your elbow. Try and avoid close contact with anyone showing signs of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing.
Before you share any coronavirus information on social media, please verify it with Ministry of Health to avoid panic and alarm among your fellow Kenyans.
Melissa?
Mom, it's Dad's birthday today. I'm giving him a party just like he gives me.
Nothing makes a mother more proud than seeing her child growing up. But I know that as she learns to care for others, she'll face even more germs and the risk of illnesses.
That's why you need strong Dettol protection. Just 1 cup of Dettol protects your home and family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
NTV Business News in association with KCB Internet Banking.
Welcome to the business news. The state should be careful on any attempt to regulate how tenants and landlord contracts are handled in light of the economic downturn brought about by COVID-19. The Institute of Economic Affairs argues that there should be no one-size-fits-all approach in attempts to ease the rent burden being borne by Kenyans.
As many suffer job losses and depressed incomes triggered by the adverse effects of COVID-19, the question of how the state can cushion tenants from paying rent has formed a large part of public debate. Indeed, Article 28D of the Pandemic Response Management Bill of 2020, sponsored by Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja, proposes that persons be prohibited from termination of lease or license of immovable property in connection with non-payment of rent or other monies for any contracts entered prior to the declaration of COVID-19 as a pandemic. The Institute of Economic Affairs now argues that following this route will be misguided.
We forget that these same investors have obligations to other people. So that one person might also have obligations. So for instance, if you're a property runner, government has decided that, look, you cannot dispose of your stuff. And on this other side, you're depending on the property to pay you money so that you can pay staff salaries. And you're told on one side you can't dispose of stuff, and then on the other side you cannot dismiss your client.
And just 3 days after President Uhuru Kenyatta announced that the country could, upon the advice of medical professionals, begin to open up select businesses through this remark.
Government will not delay in de-escalating the measures that I am announcing today the moment our experts, because it is they in whom we should trust, inform us that the risks have reduced significantly.
The IEA now warns that this should only be predicated by the ability of the country to engage in mass testing.
Unless government conducts significant tests, so that, like in the hundreds of thousands, so that we are always sure about what the level of infections are, it is possible that we might actually release everything from containment as it is now, and in another couple of months have to go back in. For as long as we don't know what the prevalence of infections are and who the asymptomatic citizens are, then it's just possible that we might actually see numbers go down, and as soon as we reopen, whether it's schools or people come back in, then there might be another one.
Julian's Amboko, NTV.
The government says it is stepping up measures aimed at streamlining the steps taken in registering innovations designed to help Kenya respond to the COVID-19 emergency. Speaking before a Senate ad hoc committee, Industry Cabinet Secretary Betty Maina said all relevant bodies have been advised to accord local industry the necessary support to test, certify and register their innovations so as to boost Kenya's capacity to respond to challenges. Well, this comes even as a number of innovators have decried red tape in being able to secure the state's green light for their products.
The firms that have innovated potential respiratory support equipment such as ventilators, they had developed it at the level of innovation, but they had not really gone to market. Therefore, we are working with them at the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute to perfect their innovation and get them ready for commercial production.
The Board of Directors of regional low-cost carrier Jambo Jet has appointed Karanja Ndegwa as its acting managing director with effect from May 1st, 2020. Ndegwa, who is currently the airline's chief financial officer, will take on the new role until a substantive managing director has been recruited and appointed. Ndegwa takes over from Alan Kilavuka, who was appointed the Kenya Airways managing director and chief executive officer. Kilavuka will continue serving on the board of Jambo Jet as a non-executive director. Ndegwa is now expected to steer the low-cost carrier at a time when its operations have been brought to a halt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Sebastian Mikoz is set to join the International Air Transport Association, that's IATA, as Senior Vice President for Member and External Relations, effective June 1st, 2020. This comes just 4 months after the Polish national left national flag carrier Kenya Airways after serving as the troubled airline's chief executive officer for 2.5 years. During his service as the CEO of Kenya Airways, Mikoz also served in IATA's board of governors. Well, he will now be reporting to the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of IATA. And that is your business news. We take another commercial break here on NTV Tonight. Don't go far.
NTV Business News in association with KCB Internet Banking.
We can always talk about your account online whenever you like.
Register at your nearest branch for KCB Internet Banking today.
Maritime tips brought to you by Kenya Maritime Authority. Precautions for vessel and boat owners, operators, coxswains and passengers. Personal hygiene. Practice frequent hand hygiene, coughing and sneezing etiquette. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces on board the boats and vessels such as steering wheel, safety or guardrails and seats. Crew members, coxswains and passengers to regularly disinfect life jackets. Practice frequent hand washing with soap. Wear a mask on board a boat or vessel. Boat owners and operators to comply with government directives on movement restrictions within counties. Kenya Maritime Authority for safe and efficient water transport.
You may be alone at home, but you can show solidarity with others by sharing Bonga Points. Share your Bonga Points with your family and friends who are in need but can't afford to buy food. Share your story or video of how you've helped a fellow Kenyan to our FB page NTV Kenya, Twitter page at NTV Kenya, Instagram at NTV Kenya, SMS 20686 or WhatsApp number 0745 925 002.
Nyaje wa Kenya, hii ni public service announcement kuhusu coronavirus.
The Ministry of Health advises all returnees from abroad to self-quarantine for at least 14 days, whether they feel well or unwell.
Wash your hands regularly following the 8 steps of hand washing. Wet hands with warm water. Apply a small amount of soap. Rub palms together. Rub fingers and thumbs and the bits in between. Rub nails on palms. Rub the back of each hand. Rinse with clean running water and dry thoroughly with a clean dry towel.
Furthermore, it is advisable to cover your mouth and nose adequately when sneezing or coughing and immediately dispose of the tissue in a dustbin. Please do not use handkerchiefs if you can avoid it. If disposable tissue is unavailable, cough into your elbow. Try and avoid close contact with anyone showing signs of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing.
Before you share any coronavirus information on social media, please verify it with Ministry of Health to avoid panic and alarm among your fellow Kenyans.
The risk of illness-causing germs is increasing. It is believed that the coronavirus can remain on surfaces in your home for up to 9 days. Touching infected surfaces is one of the ways in which germs spread. Regularly disinfect your floors, countertops and kitchen surfaces with bleach, and use an effective toilet cleaner inside and outside your toilet bowl. This message is brought to you by Medifacts, JIG and Harpic.
Do your gums hurt? Yeah. Does your toothpaste contain sage, eucalyptus, myrrh, chamomile? All that in one toothpaste? Yes, try Colgate Herbal. Colgate Herbal contains nature's best herbs and Colgate's fluoride technology to give you strong teeth and healthy gums. Ah, Colgate Herbal. Let's go. Colgate Herbal for strong teeth and healthy gums naturally.
Welcome back. As the global need for ventilators increases, countries like Kenya risk missing out on the precious commodity in these times of a global pandemic. Some Kenyan manufacturers have begun developing samples pending standard tests before they can begin mass production. The Kenya Hydraulics Limited, a local entity, has unveiled a ventilator prototype which they hope will help plug in the deficit.
For you, so this is the standard ambu bag. Like I said, it's made of fully 100% medically approved materials.
Using an ambu bag, commonly known as a manual resuscitator connected to inbuilt filters and pressure regulators and valves, the equipment can help pump air in and out of a patient's lungs. The single-use pumping system is then automated and can be used for 2 patients at a time without the nurse being around to continuously pump the bag manually.
And increase the number of breaths.
If approved by the Kenya Bureau of Standards, the company hopes to contribute to manufacturing the crucial virus defenses at this time.
This prototype is about isolating 2 different systems. So one is the medical grade ventilator, which in normal circumstances a medical practitioner, nurse or a doctor will be pressing to keep the patient alive. But now we have tried to automate that process through this prototype.
The coronavirus is known to attack the lungs, making it harder to breathe, thereby causing the body's oxygen levels to drop.
This is a basic system which can at least help us or help a patient survive. At least he will not, suffocate for the lack of oxygen.
The prototype has been locally developed at a cost of 75,000 shillings, and the company says it is able to produce 30 units in a day.
Some of the parts have to be imported. Some are manufactured locally. We have a challenge trying to get in some shipments at the moment, but at least 30 units a day can be produced.
If approved for use, the manufacturer says it will donate some units to hospitals for use. Brian Otwal, NTV.
There we go.
All right, and elsewhere, the government has begun spraying along the bush and rangelands of Samburu County, an exercise meant to eliminate desert locusts, which are still destroying acres and acres of vegetation in the country.
A cloud of yellow flying insects blankets the skies. Efforts by the communities to scare the insects away are not enough. On the trees, the little but deadly creatures cover the barks, and while the rainy season has provided the right environment for them to thrive, the residents say that their presence here is a nightmare.
Wananchi wanaumia sana juu ya mambo ya locust. Nafikiri mnaona vile tumehangaika kwa muda. Mimi hata gari yangu imeisha. Najaribu kukimbiza kutoka kwa boma. Sasa hii mali green kidogo unaona ni kwa mtu. Sasa imefamia mpaka kwangu. Tujui sasa wananchi wengine watafanya nini?
While the communities note the destructive nature of the flying pest, the flying aeroplanes in the area offer some hope. The government has embarked on an aerial spraying exercise against the desert locusts.
I've managed to spray 235 swarms. We still have so many swarms that are coming also from other places.
Though the Locust Rapid Response Team has received support from FAO and the Ministry of Agriculture on aerial surveillance and spraying, the challenges of the brutal terrain and bad weather has sometimes overwhelmed their initiatives. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
All right, let's take you further afield now to some international news. And tens of thousands of students returned to school in Shanghai and Beijing today after months of closures intended to curb the spread of the coronavirus, as China's major cities gradually return to some form of normality. Shanghai students in their final year of middle and high school returned to classrooms, while only high school seniors in Beijing were allowed back on campus to prepare for the all-important university entrance exam. China has largely curbed the spread of the deadly disease, but is still on high alert, with growing fears of imported cases and a second wave of domestic infections in the northeast. Let's take you to Germany now. And Germany started implementing its compulsory mask rule today. German federal states such as Hamburg, Lower Saxony, Bremen and Bavaria have different punitive measures for those not wearing masks in public. In Berlin, for instance, masks are only recommended in shops but mandatory in public transport. On Thursday, Chancellor Angela Merkel and the First Ministers intend to come up with rules that apply everywhere in Germany. And until then, Hamburg will claim up to $1,081 from business owners who ignore the mask rule. More than 157,000 individuals in Germany have been affected with the coronavirus. Now, most governments have announced reopening their businesses. In Kenya, the Health CS has outlined the guidelines for restaurants before they can open for business. Well, here's one way to do that. Plastic partitions have been installed in bars and restaurants to avoid the spread of the virus. One cafe in Madrid has installed such partitions and is up and ready for customers, even as Spain eases down on its restrictions. The owner says he's rushing to make the necessary changes in order to save his business, which had been closed down for 1 month. All right, that is a sense of how some countries around the world are treating the virus at this stage. Stay with us. Brian Otwal is here. He's ready and waiting with the day's sports news.
For a better tomorrow, don't forget to do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate every night.
Breastfeeding ruins the shape of your breasts. This myth is false. Feeding your baby at night makes breastfeeding easier. Yes, this is true. Small breasts can't produce enough milk. This myth is false.
Kiss Kids diapers. Kiss Kids, no rashes. Kiss Kids, no rashes. Bye-bye rashes. Bye diapers. Choose Kiss Kids.
When you're facing stubborn stains, you're always in a fierce fight. Clean Soft kicks out stains. Kimateki.
Welcome home to Amani Ridge, the place of peace. Your own urban sanctuary. A lifestyle waiting for you just 20 kilometers from the CBD. A place to unwind and get your health and fitness goals attained. A secure place for your family. A place for your children to have fun. A place to enjoy a sundowner. Success just doesn't happen. You have to make it happen. Make the impossible possible. Invest in Amani Ridge, the place of peace. Luxury you can afford. Call us today on 0790 300 300 or visit www.optivan.co.ke.
Let's have a look at the day's sports news. Welcome, my name is Brian Otwal. All rugby leagues will now remain suspended after Kenya Rugby Union rescinded its earlier decision to cancel the 2019-2020 season after consultation with the clubs. Kenya Cup and Championship clubs officially lodged their appeal last Wednesday after KRU failed to listen to their plea to revoke its decision to cancel the entire rugby season. The league was initially suspended on March 13th so as to adhere to the government directives on social gathering in the war against coronavirus pandemic. KRU had cancelled all league and cup competitions this season on April 9th, which meant there would be no promotion or relegation in any of the competitions, with all teams remaining in their current divisions for the next season. Both Kenya Cup and KRU Championship were due for playoffs on March 14th, with the semi-finals due for March 21st. The finals had been planned for April 4th. And postponement of most court cases due to the coronavirus has affected many people who had pending cases in court. David Liu, a Kenyan-based Canadian athlete who was allegedly conned by local-based businessman, was also seeking justice in Eldoret High Court. Our reporter Steve Keter spoke to him to get to know how he has been holding up with his training miles away from his coaches and training partners in Kenya.
Ovation descendant David Shuang Liu, who came to Kenya in November 2017, hoping to improve on his prowess on the track by training with big names in athletics, has been seeking justice after he was allegedly conned of 5 million shillings by a Kenyan businessman in Eldoret. On the 24th of January this year, the Eldoret High Court ruled on Liu's favor, directing the defendant Julius Kayoni to pay him a total of 6.7 million shillings as per their loan agreement.
Julius Kayoni decided to hire another lawyer, and now they are requesting an appeal in the High Court. So now the case has been postponed because of the pandemic, and we're waiting for the appeal.
But that has since been hampered by the COVID-19 pandemic, as many cases have been postponed by the courts. All he can do now is wait for the courts to open and the appeal case to continue.
I really just want this case to be resolved as soon as possible. I've been waiting to get my money back from Julius for almost a year and a half now.
Just like most athletes, the coronavirus pandemic has also brought uncertainty in his career, at least for now. Prior to going back to Canada, Liu had been training in Kaptagat, his eyes set on the 2020 Olympics qualifications, and now he can breathe a sigh of relief after the games were postponed, giving him more time to train and try to make the qualification time.
I personally want to be back in Kenya training with the best athletes, the Kenyan athletes, but unfortunately I had to stay home right now in Toronto, Canada.
He, however, does maintain his training and constant communication with his coaches through technology.
Yeah, so I have a coach in Canada, and also in Kenya, I'm fortunate enough to know Patrick San, who is the coach for Eliud Kipchoge as well. So I send him messages to keep in touch.
When all is done and dusted, he hopes to get back stronger and better. Steve Keter, NTV Sports.
And FIFA has proposed allowing teams to make up to 5 substitutions per match to help players cope with the congested schedule and return to action after the coronavirus pandemic. Teams will be afforded only 3 slots plus the halftime break during the match to make their changes in a bid to avoid unnecessary stoppages. The proposals made for competitions scheduled until the end of 2021 season are an acknowledgement of the increased demands likely to be placed on the players when football returns. They will be coming off the back of a long layoff due to the pandemic, and matches are likely to be played every few days as leagues seek to make up for lost time. FIFA's plans are subject to approval from the International Football Association Board, that is IFAB, which is responsible for the laws of the game and is already considering the proposal.